Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. Let's start. Well, first of all, this is a disclaimer that I had to put it there. No one reads it anyways, but basically it says that I don't try to take the rights that SAP has over their brands. Okay? So who am I? My name is Jordan Santarsieri. I am the founder of a company called Bixer. My original background was as a pen tester, red teamer, and then I started to specialize on this kind of ERP systems, especially in SAP. When I can, I like to speak on different security conferences like Black Hat, OWASP, and now the Code Blue. Thank you so much for that. And I have been dealing with SAP for quite a while. I have experience dealing with, you name it, like ONGs, military institutions, and Fortune 500 companies. That's my Twitter right there, in case you want it. And what I have for you today will be divided in 4 different chapters. First, we'll have a brief introduction to SAP. Again, this originally was like a 1-hour talk. I had to trim it down a little bit to fit these 40 minutes. So it will be a very, very brief introduction to SAP. Then I will tell you what is the project ARSAP. I'm going to be releasing something exclusively for Code Blue in terms of the project ARSAP. And we're going to start getting more technical on Chapter 3 and Chapter 4, where we're going to see malware distribution on SAP and how well are the SAP systems that are currently on the internet. OK, so let's start with the introduction. Many of you might be thinking, OK, so what is SAP? Let me tell you that SAP is like the main financial system in the world. It's huge. It's a German company that was founded in 1972 by ex-IBM employees. Those guys were working on an ERP for IBM. The project gets canceled, and they decide to quit and start creating their own company. And that was one of the most successful business decision in the modern history of software. Why? Because these guys have nowadays more than 98,000 employees worldwide. They have more than 400,000 customers out there. They're in almost every single country on this planet. And I think the most representative number is the one that you will see at the end. For the total of Forbes Global 2000, that means like the richest 2,000 companies out there, 92% is currently using SAP. They totally dominate the market. So what solutions, what type of SAP systems you might find? Again, for this really brief introduction, we're going to divide this in 2. We will have the enterprise solutions. Those solutions will be the ones that will be providing support to end users, customers, and from the other one side, we have the supporting solutions. Those solutions will provide support to the enterprise solutions. If in your company you only have one SAP system, that will be the SAP ERP, or you might hear about the enterprise resource planning. That is the heart of the SAP implementation. If your company processes credit cards, it's going to be there. If payroll information is handled in SAP, it's going to be there. Vacations, wire transfers, etc. All that will be on the ERP system. And then you have many more. You have like business intelligence. It's how companies apply intelligence to sell more and faster to the customers. CRM, where the relationships between the companies and the customers are stored, and so on. As you can tell, it's pretty sensitive information in terms of a monetary value. Everything that we're going to see for this presentation corresponds to what is called SAP NetWeaver. SAP NetWeaver is the framework where SAP is built in. It's the most important technology that SAP has. That technology will be divided in 2. From one side, you have the ABAP. It's mainly focused, or you can see it more as a backend. And you have the Java side that SAP is slowly sunsetting, that is mainly intended for front-end services. How you differentiate between one another? Well, it's very simple. ABAP is where the money is. Java is the front end. this graph that I have created for you is more or less how SAP is divided. Again, it's like a very big picture. Each one of the stacks that I mentioned will have its own set of services with its own set of protocols. In the ERP world, it's very common that the protocols are proprietary. Most of them are proprietary. And for most of them, you don't have technical information. Basically, you need to sit on your chair and start reverse engineer to figure out how it actually works. And how people connect to these SAP systems? Well, they have many ways, depending from where you're connecting to. If you are on the adjacent network, most likely you will have the SAP GUI. This is how you connect to ABAP. Basically, this is a client that SAP has created for us, and I like to say that it's like an extra thick client. Just for a client, it's 1.4 gigabytes that you need to download. Then, from the systems that are on the internet, or when you want to connect to the web application server, you connect to something that is called ICM, that is a proprietary web application server for ABAP, or if you want to connect to Java, is the Java HTTP. It's just that the name. They didn't create any significant name for this web application server. And later on, SAP is creating something new. It's actually an evolution of the SAP ICM that is called the XSA. They are creating something new that is called HANA. It's a database in memory that they are fusioning as well with this web application server. But for the point of this talk, it doesn't matter. A new beginning. Let me tell you about this project ARSAP. As I told you before, I'm with a company called Bixer that specializes in security on the ERP. SAP, Oracle Business Suite, Civil, you name it. Where we do pen tests, vulnerability assessment, trainings, and so on. And many forensics. I love the forensics, but I always like to joke that whenever I had to do the forensics, I lose 2 years of my life. So we were a relatively new company, right? And we had the challenges that every relatively new company has. How do we find customers? Most people, what they will do is they just buy a list of SAP customers, they start doing cold calling, and they get a success rate of more or less 1%. That is exactly what spammers get. So I don't think it's a coincidence. We said, no, wait a second. I mean, we are hackers. We have technical knowledge. We should be able to do better. And that's how this project ARSAP was born. We said, OK, let's scan every single data sources that we have. For example, Shodan, Google, Bing, Sumai, even some sketchy resources on the deep web. And let's try to use those guys to find SAP systems that are listening on the internet. It's exactly what we did. We wanted every single SAP system that we could find, like ABAP systems, Java systems, and all the other technologies that we don't care, at least for now. So what we did, we created a structure, basically a script, that will be interacting with each one of the data sources, and we extracted the information. Why we needed the extractor? Because we knew that that map that we were creating was going to be live. And then we got many other surprises. For example, we got a lot of companies actually publishing not just the productive SAP system, if not dev and QA. So we definitely need something to keep that live map alive. So once we have all that bulky information, it was a lot of terabytes, actually. So what we needed to do is to make it smarter. We needed to filter that info. So how we could do that? Well, lucky for us, and as you can see on the screen, SAP is quite verbose on the banners of the web application servers. Look at it. I mean, it has no doubt that you're dealing with an SAP system. SAP NetWeaver application server 721, application server Java 731. You have that. It's an SAP system. You have the type of SAP system, and you also have the version of the system. Of course, we did more than that. We got even smarter. We started to review the SSL certificates, if there were any. Oh, you won't believe how many productive SAP systems are out there that they don't even have SSL certificates, or even when the certificates are self-signed. So we get smarter, and we started dividing that knowledge that we were gaining, because we wanted to know, first of all, we wanted to know who was the owner of that asset, We wanted to know where that asset was being hosted. So basically what we did, we started to add tags to the systems that we were discovering. And we went even a little bit ahead. We started to identify, OK, those assets are belonging to an ONG. Those assets are belonging to a company. Because I always like to joke, like SAP is so expensive, it's like a Rolls Royce. And there is no such thing as an orphan Rolls Royce. So if there is an SAP system out there in the internet, it's because a big company or a big organization is behind it. And also, remember, we had the version. So as we had the version, we compared that version against the knowledge base that we have of it was a combination of the internal research that we do plus what is called the SAP security notes, like the vulnerabilities that were reported by SAP itself or other researchers. And we did some sort of reverse process to know exactly what of those SAP systems that were on the internet were vulnerable to attacks. Are you intrigued by the results? I have some to share with you. For example, we found about 14,000 SAP services exposed directly to the internet right there. And you might be thinking, well, Matt, maybe there is a WAF there, maybe it's an IDS, maybe it's an IPS. Well, let me tell you that unfortunately, an SAP is so niche, most of these providers have no signatures whatsoever for SAP. So it doesn't matter if you have an IDS, an IPS out there. If I can reach the web application server, I can start trying my attacks. And also, remember that I was telling you that we wanted to identify the companies behind the assets. Well, for almost 40% of the SAP systems that we found, we were able to identify exactly who was the owner of those SAP systems and where it has been hosted. It's quite interesting here in the region. You guys were quite right, quite OK in comparison with some other countries. There are tons and tons of SAP systems being hosted in Singapore because AWS there has a big cluster, and also a lot of SAP systems in Korea by Korea Telecom. But in terms of the region, you guys, in terms of security and in terms of the many assets are there, you guys were quite good. So I told you that I have a little bit of a surprise for you today, something exclusively for CodeBlue. The analysis that we created, we have put it in form of a paper, and we are releasing it right now for the very first time. If you want to get a copy of that, you have to go to our website. It's like https://bigser.com/research/situation.html. Basically, you have a more detail of what we did, how we did it, and which one were of the results. We have divided the results per continent, so it will be easier for you if you want to focus only in Asia. So, apart of that, apart of knowing who was behind the SAP systems, knowing the versions, the tags, etc., we wanted to go a little bit ahead. And unfortunately, we discovered, without touching the SAP systems, and this is very important, by just knowing the version of the asset, we didn't send any of the attacks to the systems that were on the internet. Without touching them, we were able to figure it out that 27% of the systems that we found were vulnerable to critical or high criticality vulnerabilities. Basically, for most of them, you could do remote command execution, directly transversal, file upload, file download, etc. You can literally own the asset from the internet. We were highly surprised by this number. Actually, personally, I was expecting someone around the 10%, and we got almost 3 times more than we were expecting. And we say, OK, oh my God, those numbers are so high, someone with the necessary level of skill wants to create a worm, it will be a tragedy, it will be a carnage. We wanted to help, for sure, but before that, we need to understand how someone could actually approach, how someone could actually try to overcome the security of these systems that they were exposed to the internet. I'm going to start with a real example. This is an attack that was suffered from one of our customers, of course. I'm not going to give any details about that. Same on the paper. You will find the paper. You will find the distribution of the companies that we were able to detect, but of course, no names are going to be disclosed whatsoever. So this is an attack that one of our customers suffered. This was through email campaigns. And you will see that it will be quite similar to what you guys have to deal on their everyday basis at your jobs. But it will have a little twist for SAP. Now, I want to make a very important clarification, and it will be that clarification will be applicable through all my presentation. When I was finding myself creating the demos, I have several live demos on live SAP systems here on this machine that I'm going to show you. I said, oh my God, I'm actually showing something very powerful and it will be very easily to replicate to do bad stuff. So I have added a few twists, so it's not that simple to take the content of this presentation and create an actual malware. Just an FYI. I'm going to make the clarifications wherever I find myself a little bit downgrading the attack. I'm going to make the clarifications so we can all be on the same page. So put yourself in the mindset of an attacker. Let's suppose that you did the same task that I did, that you were scouting the internet for SAP systems, you got the versions of the SAP systems, and you want to point. You're an attacker that wants to compromise a particular company that is running the SAP systems. What do you do? Well, first, then you start doing some OSINT, right? First, you know the company, you know that they use SAP. If they use SAP, you can suppose that the SAP will be across the board, right? Because you don't just buy one module, you buy quite a lot. If you know that, and if you know that they're running SAP, you can also infer that the company has a lot of people actually working there. And when you have a lot of people working in a single company, normally what you do, you implement single sign-on, so they don't have to remember like 1,000 different passwords. They can just deal with one and log into multiple systems. So you have multiple things. They use SAP, they have a lot of resources, most likely a lot of SAP assets, and they use single sign-on. What do you do? And what happened to this customer? Well, they send by email what is called the SAP GUI scripts. SAP GUI scripting is a proprietary language that SAP has created that it will allow you to do, for example, stress testing on SAP. It's very similar to Visual Basic scripting. If you send that on an attachment and a user double clicks on it, it will automatically open your SAP client and I will start taking steps inside the SAP system as the privilege of the victim that double clicked that attack. In terms of analyzing the content of that file, maybe you are thinking, okay, yeah, but my antivirus should be able to handle that, right? Well, again, remember that when we are on this ERP world, established solutions that work very well for the regular desktop or for the regular server will not do the trick on SAP. So this is the scenario. The attacker is going to send a malicious email that someone inside the user's VLAN, I'm being very generous here, normally and unfortunately, the user's VLAN and the server VLAN on the SAP world, well, let's say that second leg of the firewall doesn't exist. But let's be kind. The user is on a separate VLAN than the servers. The user will receive that attachment, it will double-click, and it will trigger an action on the SAP system. Even though if you have a second firewall here, still the firewall will have to allow access to the SAP port, because otherwise the regular people will not be able to work with it. So let me show you what you will see on the SAP system. This is the SAP system that I have for you. I'm speeding a little bit the demo because we don't have a lot of time. But this is the client that you see. Let's see how much time you have to detect that something wrong is happening. Basically, what it does here, I mean, you can trigger any action whatsoever. But basically, what I'm doing here is I'm completely resetting the value of a table that was supposed to contain public depth. You can do whatever you want here, as long as you can put it on the attachment. And if the user that is executing the stuff has enough privileges, you can do pretty much whatever you want with the system. You can even try to shut down the system if you can to. But this is too obvious, right? If someone wants to do something bad, if someone wants to do a real malware, they have to do much better than this. First of all, you might be wondering, OK, how we can stop this scenario when someone sends me something malicious, and at the same time, I can keep my stress testing going? Well, you can keep the SAP GUI scripting enabled, but you need to activate a profile parameter that is script/user scripting per user to true. And once you do that, only the user that has a particular authorization will be able to execute the scripts. Same, you can configure the SAP GUI to alert you whenever someone is trying to invoke one of those scripts. So let's get more technical here. Let's see how a real malware could affect the systems that are exposed on the internet. As I told you before, we wanted to help, but we needed to put ourselves in the mindset of an attacker before we can actually try to help. We need to understand the threat before we can recommend a solution. So what we did is we studied malwares in the past, and we started to get some common patterns that all of those malwares share. They were designed to hit fast, and they were designed to hit hard. For a malware, lateral movement was goal. The main objective was to spread as fast as they can, and most of the time, avoiding making noise was not a priority. Also, and this is very common, the malware itself, the framework, is not necessarily attached to a vulnerability. What happens here is that in general, the attackers, especially the most sophisticated ones, they already have a framework for the malware distribution, and then they put the vulnerability on top to create that point of access. It's the same as having a gun and a bullet. Not necessarily have to be the same thing. And this will be our scenario. Again, the attacker will be connecting through the internet to a front-end system. That system will be on Java. The front-end system will be speaking to another back-end system on the DMC. This is a very common setup. And look at this. That back-end ABAP system is also connected to tons of SAP systems on the internal network. That might sound a little bit strange to you if you're not that familiar with SAP. Let me tell you that SAP has been designed to be highly interconnected. All the SAP systems will be talking to each other. How? We don't care. We don't have time to learn that. But you will have to take my word that the systems will be interconnected. An attacker that wants to attack an SAP system will know that. So what do we do? Well, we're going to break it on steps. First, we're going to break in on the front-end Java system. Then we're going to get some credentials for the system. We're going to try to do lateral movement with that. We're going to escape the DMC. And also, finally, we are going to give you an example of how you can even attack the clients, the workstations that are connected to the SAP system at that moment. Again, a full malware will not be shown, of course, for obvious reasons, but I will show you some code as well. And not release it, but I will show you. Later on, after this presentation, if you have doubts or questions about the code, let me know, and I can show you a little bit more. So, we're going to hit that front-end SAP system. We have different ways to do it. This is the time when I integrated myself the attack. I'm going to show you with an exploit that is relatively old. There is one exploit that is only 3 months old that works like a charm. It's a remote command execution. But for obvious reasons, I'm not going to show you. We're going to do it with an exploit that still works very well, by our calculations, 20% of the Java systems that we found still are vulnerable, a little bit more, almost 30%. Let me show you. And this one in particular, it doesn't matter even if you have a waffle there, it will still work like a charm. So look at this. This is the URL that we're going to use. By just knowing the URL, we can literally send the command that we want to execute, and it's going to be executed under the privileges of the user that is running the SAP system. I'm going to show you real quick because we don't have tons of time. But basically, you can do whatever you want. As you can see, we're running under the service account that is being used by SAP. We can execute the net users. We can do whatever we want in terms of the SAP system. We can shut down the system, or we can jump to the database by abusing of the trust relationship that always the web application servers will maintain with the database without providing any username and password. So pretty much at this point, if we go back to this scenario, the front-end system Java is completely compromised. We had common execution there. We want now harvest credentials and start jumping around. So what you can do to stop the attacker at this point before we move forward, well, this vulnerability in particular is something that is called Invoker servlet. Basically, it's an application that SAP will ship by default that SAP uses to install itself. That's why it's so powerful, and that's why it's so simple that it just pastes the command there and gets executed without credentials. That, and in combination of an attack, maybe some of you have heard about the verb tampering attacks. You can combine this with those verb tampering techniques. Basically, the servlet is configured that if you receive a request through GET or POST, it should ask for authentication. But that vision of the HTTP verbs is so 90s. Some of you might know that GET can actually be replaced by HEAD, and POST can actually be replaced by PUT. So guess what happens when you set a HEAD instead of a GET? You get a command execution without authentication. Directly on the SAP works very well. So we compromise this Java system. We want credentials. What do we do now? There is something, again, this is a default built-in mechanism in SAP, that is called secure storage. Basically, it's a file on the file system encrypted with TSS that will hold the complete JDBC, the connection chain to the database, so we will have the database password, and it will also contain the SAP administrator's password. By itself, it doesn't say anything. You might be thinking, okay, so what's the deal there? Well, the problem is that this TSS secure file has a hard-coded key. So if you reverse engineer that and you get the hard-coded key, guess what? You can get the credentials. And it's exactly what we're going to do. And of course, this is Java, so it's very trivial to just get the jar, reverse engineer it. You will need a key. You will need that key, the hard-coded key. And once you have that, there are many ways to open the secure storage. This tool is actually open source. I had it for a long time, but if you Google on the internet, you will find it. Basically, gets the file system, decrypts it, and there is. You get the most important passwords on the SAP system. The secure storage, this is for you for your reference because we don't have time. Those are the two files that we have there, and basically will contain the master password. We're going to see what master password is. So we have compromised the SAP system. We want to compromise the ABAP system that is on the DMC. How we do it? We could do SMB, we can do SSH, trying to reutilize the credentials that we have, or we can use a built-in mechanism called JCO. Basically, JCO is the way that SAP has implemented for a Java system to be able to speak with the ABAP system. It is the JCO destination will end up in the database encrypted. But unfortunately, they use exactly the same algorithm that we saw before on the secure storage. And unfortunately, they use the same hard-coded key that we saw with the same algorithm. So if you had that, you can perform a remote connection with something that is called RFEC, that is a proprietary protocol that SAP has, and execute other commands on the remote system. That's it. You didn't touch much. You just execute something that is called RFEC. It's a remote function call directly towards the SAP system. For example, here, I'm obtaining the user tables of the system that is on the DMC as well, with the hashes. You just put that on John the Reaper, and you make a disaster. So what is this master password that I'm quickly mentioning about? Well, this is quite bad, to be honest. I'm going to speed up. When you install an SAP system, SAP is going to tell you, hey, do you want to use a master password, or do you want to set a password for each one of the SAP accounts? If you choose the master password, the biggest and most powerful SAP application users, the operating system user, and the database user will all share that same password that you configure. It will be pretty much everywhere on the most important layers that you have out there. And unfortunately, this is the option that comes by default. If you are a serial next clicker, if you do next, you will end up with the master password. And according to my research and according to all the pen testers that I do, 95% of the customers use the master password. It's unfortunate because if you break one layer, all the other layers will fall apart. And pretty much, once you have the master password, you can start doing what is called the RFEC destinations, or you can just put there SMB, remote desktop, SSH, whatever you want, because you know that the master password is being used, and you know that you can utilize those privileges pretty much everywhere. Or at least you can infer thinking in your attacks. So bonus track, because we're running out of time. I told you that apart of compromising the DMC, apart of compromising the first system, Java system, apart of harvesting the credentials, I told you that you could do stuff to the customers that are currently connecting to the SAP system. Well, I decided to make it through something that is called SOAP RFEC. Basically, it's an application that is a web application that SAP has out there that you can consume on the internet. It doesn't come enabled by default, but it's quite popular. That basically will translate a SOAP message, a SOAP packet, into RFEC, into this proprietary RFEC protocol. Basically, what we're going to do here is use an RFEC application that will send messages to the SAP users. I'm not sure if you can see it very well here, but that is the SOAP message that you need to use. Basically, what I'm going to do here is just for a user Jordan, but you can definitely apply this to all the users that are connecting to the SAP system, I think by just adding an asterisk. What we're going to tell them, oops, there we go. What we're going to tell, basically, to the user that is connected right now at the moment to the SAP system, as I am right here, we're going to tell them, hey, something is wrong with your SAP GUI configuration. In order to fix it, you need to go to this sketchy URL and download the package. Basically, what you will do is some sort of an advanced social engineer message. You can push it through all the clients, all the human beings that are connecting right now to the SAP system. And the message will come as if it comes from the SAP system itself. So you have some sort of fake certainty or fake validation that it comes from the server. OK, so for my last 3 minutes, I'm going to do a wrap-up. So what did we learn today? If you are going to take one thing from this talk, I wanted to take this particular question. do you actually need to expose your SAP systems to the internet? It's the very first question that you need to ask yourself. Does it have to be directly exposed to the internet? Why not a VPN? Why not some sort of Citrix environment? Also, be very careful with these IDS, IPS, WAF, because it might give you a false sense of security. If you're going to put something, put an SAP web dispatcher there. It's a free utility that SAP gives you to restrict access to the web pages. Apply patches, apply patches, apply patches. It's very controversial in SAP because even veridic SAP patches have been known to cause disruption on the SAP systems, but you still need to apply them. Be sure that your SOC is SAP aware. More often than not, they will not. I always like to joke that it's like a Venn diagram that never intercepts. From one side, you have IT security, and from the other side, you have SAP security, but they not usually know the job of the other. And finally, prevent. If we get to do a forensics in SAP, we are too late. And more often than not, we will not have all the information that we need. OK, so I think we are right on time. Thank you very much for assisting my presentation. And I think we have time for one more question. So thank you very much. Thank you for your time.